we're going to be looking at some of the weirdest, most interesting, and sometimes outright creepy glitches that exist across the Animal Crossing franchise. So sit back and relax, or use the chapter select tool down below to jump ahead to your favorite Animal Crossing title, but all of these are pretty cool, so you're probably going to want to watch the whole video. Alright, ready, set, go. Let's start off looking at the glitches from Animal Crossing on the Gamecube with one of the creepier ones that you probably heard of, the gyroid face. In the original Gamecube version of Animal Crossing, if you wanted to visit another person's town, you would have to get their memory card, put it in the second slot on your Gamecube, and then go to the train station to go and take the train to their town. From there, you could visit, talk to their villagers, and shop in their store. However, if the player who is playing resets their Gamecube without properly saving by leaving the train station and heading back to their town, when they start up their game again, they'll notice something very off when it comes to their villager. Yeah, their villager will end up looking like this, which as a kid could be something absolutely terrifying. Now, this has been debated whether or not this counts as a glitch or an Easter egg and whether or not it was deliberate, but also all of your inventory items will be gone as well, and we're leaning on classifying this as a glitch more than an Easter egg because normally when you reset your game without saving, Mr. Rossetti shows up, and in this case, Rossetti doesn't show up. Your face is just cursed until you save and restart again. On Animal Crossing for the GameCube, if you get a villager that maybe you don't like and you have them nearby a bridge, you can maybe accidentally push them into the river if you feel like it. This is doing so by pushing them a little bit and then hitting them repeatedly with the net when they're right on the edge, and they will slip into the water. Now, this specific glitch has been done by JVGS Jeff, an Animal Crossing content creator who literally has some of the most amazing documentation of glitches, events, and other things of Animal Crossing from over the years, so he definitely is deserving of a massive shout out here. But yeah, I think it's really funny just seeing this villager soaking away in the river. When Animal Crossing was originally being developed, the developers utilized special beta maps to test out various features in Animal Crossing. But what you might not have known is that these maps, despite the fact that they are weird and kind of spooky-like, can still be accessed in any Animal Crossing game. Now, this was originally discovered years back by using Action Replay to essentially hack the game into letting you see the debug menu, and then from there you could load the beta map, and you would see weird things like villagers that had odd names to them or weird dialogue, to just other random things in a town that you wouldn't normally see, whether it's weird landscapes or just fruit everywhere or random items, to just dark spaces that have nothing going on in them. Now, of course, this was originally done through hacking, so it wasn't too surprising that this would be accessible, but a method of accessing these locations was later on discovered without the use of using an Action Replay. About 5 years ago, D-Pad Gamer did an interesting video showcasing the methods of accessing the debug menu and getting to these beta maps without having to use any cheating devices. To pull this off, you have to have the day of a event going on. You also have to have enough bells and debt to pay off to Tom Nook. If you time yourself going in the post office right before an event is alerted to the town, pay off your debt and then leave the post office, and things get really weird. So yeah, no matter how you slice it up, this is a part of the game that can be accessed, and it is really interesting. But if you've ever just wanted to explore the outskirts of your own town, there's another glitch you can pull off in Animal Crossing for the GameCube as well. Now, this has also been covered by YouTubers like D-Pad Gamer or Gyroid Gaming, but if you time a giant snowball that you roll to this section of the beach and then have it pushed into the water while you're grabbing an item right below it, the entire animation will force your villager into the ocean, allowing you essentially to explore the entire out of bounds area. From there, you can just freely run around. If you have data from a Game Boy Island, you can run over there, otherwise you'll just have this giant black void, and overall it's a pretty cool glitch from the original game. Next, let's take a look at Animal Crossing Wild World. Now, in general, there's been duplication glitches throughout the course of pretty much every Animal Crossing game in one way or another. So we might not cover every single duplication glitch in this video just because they're very similar a lot of the time, but back in Wild World, there was a very common glitch that was really cool that allowed you to duplicate bells, and it wasn't too hard to do. Essentially, all you had to do was time yourself dropping an item and placing some bells and a table down at the same time, and then you could pick up the bells and move the table, and the bells would be there again, allowing you to pick them up a second time. There are a couple of nuanced things that can happen while doing this glitch, like messing up and losing some bells, but for the most part, people typically would become some net positive doing this trick. Did it break some of the economy of Animal Crossing Wild World? Absolutely. But hey, when you're a kid and you need bells quick, this was a method that some people turned to. This next one is way creepier than it probably is going to sound by me explaining it, but just bear with me. This just happens from time to time when you're playing Animal Crossing Wild World, but sometimes when you're fishing, after you pull your reel up, the music will just cut out and all you hear is the game sound effects, which for whatever reason just can be really, really eerie, just not having the undertones of the music that you're so used to hearing whenever you play Animal Crossing. I don't know if you guys get this, but I definitely feel like it's relevant. Now, I looked up and down throughout the internet for footage of this one, but I don't think that there's really anything out there video capture wise of this happening, though there is documentation online of it happening, and because this glitch mostly occurred before the YouTube days, it kind of makes sense that there's not a lot of documentation of it. But back when Animal Crossing Wild World first released, there was a specific glitch involving Gulliver. Now in this game, Gulliver will fly a UFO overhead and you can shoot him down with your slingshot. After that, the game kind of goes into a cutscene announcing that this UFO had crashed. However, in the early days of this game, if you shot Gulliver down and he landed on a signpost, the cutscene would play indefinitely and you would not be able to exit the cutscene without resetting your game, which would cause you to lose all your progress for the day and Mr. Rossetti would show up. What's really interesting about this is while this glitch isn't really done anymore because most people who have the game either got the update that Nintendo eventually rolled out pretty quickly early on, or their cartridge was produced after the glitch was patched, but this is one of the instances of Nintendo very early on releasing a post-game patch for a glitch. Something that wasn't very commonplace in the 90s and early 2000s, but since this game did have internet connectivity, they were able to roll out a small patch fixing this glitch, which is why nowadays we never actually see this glitch happen, especially with documentation on YouTube or anything like that. Now, one thing I did actually find documentation on was a very simple but weird glitch, but there was someone playing their game once and they just saw a bunch of fleas but no villager, which is really, really odd. Typically, you only see fleas if they're on a villager, but there was nothing here. And using the net to try to catch the fleas didn't work either. Were they witnessing some sort of ghost villager all of a sudden here and didn't know what to do? At least they ended up filming it, but to this day, we still don't fully know what was happening here. Let's go forward to Animal Crossing City Folk, and once again, we have this clip of JVGS Jeff, who found a way to push his villagers into the water. Again, this time this strategy utilizes snowmen near the sides of the river to force a villager into an area that they're not supposed to go into. But still, it's just funny seeing Jeff's track record here of pushing villagers into a river. Also, fortunately enough, like we talked about earlier in this video, Jeff has an amazing catalog documenting a lot of the things that have happened over the course of decades of Animal Crossing, and there's this glitch apparently that happens in online play that can occur if one player is glitched in the corner while connected on Wi-Fi, something you can't even do nowadays, and it would cause an online player to just become giant in size for whatever reason. And even if you leave the store and come back in, that character is just stuck there, and it's pretty hilarious. I don't know. I can't describe enough how much I really appreciate Jeff's content and other funny things that have happened. City Folk did have some other interesting glitches as well. This was a game that had a lot of people exploring the limits that could be pushed with online play. For instance, a YouTuber named TGHD86 and his friend decided to push Tortimer into a corner because of the way that online works, and there was two entities being there. Tortimer couldn't move and instead got clipped up on top of the windmill. Someone help this poor tortoise off of the windmill, please. Okay, then when it also comes to Animal Crossing City Folk, there were two glitches that were incredibly common that a lot of people used to do because of the online play. One of these was sometimes accidental and I guess sometimes intentional, but for whatever reason, occasionally you could end up glitching inside of another villager who's like visiting your town, and all of a sudden the two of you will be stuck inside of the same spot and neither person can escape, which just leads to this uncomfortable moment, I guess. But I guess this was back in the day where people were just trying to find ways to break the game in new ways, and they definitely found one. Okay, and then the other one's probably not that interesting because we already looked at Tortimer, but you could get multiple players up on top of the windmill if you pushed enough people into that spot, similarly to what you did with Tortimer, and it was just this weird glitch thing that could happen. But then, all of a sudden, this ended up becoming one of the cooler hangout spots in Animal Crossing City Folk for one reason or another. I don't know. 2008 was a weird time. Animal Crossing City Folk had just came out. Glitches were all cool. People thought there were hackers just for finding them. It was a big deal, and this was one that I think a lot of people might remember from all the way back in the earliest days of this game being released. Okay, now let's look to Animal Crossing New Leaf for the 3DS. One of the most popular Animal Crossing games in the series by far. This game, when it came to glitches, the biggest and most frequently used glitch were definitely those out-of-bound glitches that were discovered back in the day. And there was a lot of them, and they were all really fun and interesting to look at. But essentially, with using different methods, specifically one using the cursed King Tut mask, you could end up falling close to a riverbank and force yourself into the river itself, which then gave you access outside of the main area of the map, and you could run around in the river without actually having to do the whole swimming mechanic. This allowed you to do a ton of fun and random things, and while it is really fun looking at these moments of just players from over the years running around through the water and going places they weren't supposed to go, there were other tricks also that were discovered, like being able to glitch in other sections of the map as well, whether it was getting yourself on top of a building or running around on railroad tracks, because what better place to play than on railroad tracks? Actually, one funny thing is I found someone who documented themselves doing this glitch and getting up to where the train was, and they filmed themselves interacting with the train as it was passing by, and you could hear screaming as the train ran them over, and it's just unsettlingly hilarious. Nonetheless, the expanses that players were able to explore by utilizing these glitches were pretty cool, and it seemed like the fact that this had online play with it, and of course the duplicate item glitches that people would pull off in online play was there as well, just led to a lot of really fun moments between friends who were just trying different ways to mess around in their game, and I think that's really awesome. Especially now, years later, looking back at old clips that are uploaded onto the archive of YouTube, where we can see people and what they were wanting to show off back in the days of Animal Crossing New Leaf still being relevant. There's also this glitch where apparently a villager can just sit in a bench that you have set up as a public works even before your bench is built, which is just kind of funny. Like, hey, I'm trying to pay for this here, I'm trying to set it up, and you're just gonna go ahead and fall asleep on this bench. Yeah, thanks. Over in Pocket Camp, there's not too many glitches to really get into, but there was one really weird one that kept occurring from time to time early on with Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, where essentially every once in a while one of your friends would show up as this default looking villager, and it was really creepy. It didn't have any of the clothing items you could pick out or whatever on, just default. And if you went and visited this default villager's campsite, it would just be completely empty. Yeah, it was just odd that this would show up in replacement to one of your friends. This ended up being nothing likely, and it was patched out later on, but still worth noting here. There were also some other glitches that were discovered that let you clip through objects, which sometimes could let you stand inside of an object, which could make for some really funny or interesting or even cool screenshots that you couldn't otherwise do without doing these glitches. But yeah, Pocket Camp was pretty simple. Going into Animal Crossing New Horizons though, there was a ton of different glitches over the course of New Horizons. Many would get patched out, some of them would remain, but let's go over some of the interesting ones that don't necessarily exist anymore and talk about those first, and then we'll get into some of the ones you still can do. Firstly, just like in Pocket Camp, there was a glitch to let you merge with objects, which led to a lot of people taking advantage of that while that still was in the game to get some really fun screenshots off of their villager before this would get patched out. So we would see some images of people sitting in swimming pools and other things that you couldn't actually do in the game, and it was just used lightheartedly. Now there was other ways you could use glitches like this to manipulate the game, get extra items and duplicate stuff, and that's probably why it got patched out. But hey, the gentler side of just taking fun photos was kind of fun. There also for a while was a way where you could glitch up to the 4th level of your island, an area that you normally can't access, and from there you could even place items, which was really cool for decoration, though this would end up getting patched out later on. And there was also a glitch for a while where if you had a cliff built all the way up to the 4th level, even though you couldn't get up onto it, if you shot a present in a balloon out of the sky and it landed on the 4th level, you would be out of luck, as that present would just be stuck there with no way of getting up to it to grab it, and it wouldn't go away until you saved and quit and started up the next day. There were a few interesting some glitches you could do by interacting with different objects to place your villager in a different location. Some of these would actually give you access to the water, and you could run around out of bounds in the water once again, just like you could in the older Animal Crossing games. Or some people use this to try to get on top of buildings. It didn't serve too much of a purpose other than just looking interesting, but yeah, that was kind of cool. Okay, this next one might sound kind of silly, but back in the day, before the camera gave you options to hide the HUD in Animal Crossing, you know, like the on-screen little things that pop up, there was a glitch that players used to do to be able to hide the HUD on their own so they could take screenshots without showing all of the stuff on camera. This would end up getting patched, though the feature would be implemented later on, making the need for the glitch not really necessary. Okay, this next one totally freaked me out when it happened to me in my own Animal Crossing game, but turns out to be something that happened to other people also. If you have a villager who's moving out and is in boxes, and you have someone come over to talk to the villager to get them to move to their island, and then you disconnect while you're online, the villager's house will remain on your island, though if you try to visit them, there will be text that pops up saying, "I moved out," and that's it. You can't go inside the house, you can't ever interact with them again. They're essentially lost to the void. I had a similar experience happen myself with the villager Bob, who I was trying to give away to make room for some other villager, and I made a listing on Nookazon, and someone came over and tried to scam me out of 20 Nook Mile tickets and just went to try to talk to Bob without dropping the Nook Mile tickets for me. This person already had some suspicious reviews on their Nookazon account, so I just disconnected altogether because I just didn't want to be scammed. I didn't really care too much if I made the 20 Nook Mile tickets or not. But then of course, when I got back to my island, the house was in this weird state with it saying that they had already moved. So that was a little concerning. I was more worried about the fact that it said I had moved and the house was still there. Like, am I just gonna have this empty house stuck on my island forever? Am I not gonna be able to have the lot freed up to get a brand new villager to move in? That was my main concern, but fortunately after a day, the house just mysteriously disappeared and I had an open lot and I was able to get someone else to move in and never worried about it again. I guess this glitch maybe got patched out later on, but still, it could be a lot worse if you had a high value villager and you were banking on trying to get some Nook Mile tickets and someone maybe disconnected or something, and then this happens. Honestly, in retrospect, buying and selling villagers is kind of goofy nowadays, but back then it was a really big deal. Now there are some glitches that still are in the game that are kind of fun to think about or look at. For instance, if you have some sort of furniture up on a cliff, there's a chance that one of your villagers will just launch themselves from the ground to go sit up on top of whatever furniture is up by the cliff. Also, for a long time, there's been restrictions on where you can put certain furniture pieces or where you can grow trees, but there is actually specific tricks you can do to put trees in places you aren't normally supposed to, like on cliff corners. Fortunately enough, these guides seem to mostly still work right now, where you can put trees in places that you normally aren't supposed to, which can really just tie your aesthetic all together in a way that maybe you were struggling with for something very specific. It's actually really cool. This next one's not fully a glitch, but I wanted to include it too because a lot of people have utilized it. But by placing different items like panels or furniture near each other, you can actually create full-on secret entranceways to different areas that you have hidden away on your island. And this is just a really cool touch if you're trying to hide some good stuff that you have, and maybe you have a sibling who could go on your account or something. You don't want them to find it. Using little tricks like this to hide them are pretty cool, or you just want to impress your friends in a good game of hide and go seek. But yeah, I always thought that those were awesome. Then there's this early one that's still technically in the game because it's not fully a glitch, but it is something that I think Animal Crossing was aware with because they did change the percentage spawns a little bit. But Tarantula Island and Scorpion Island, one of the islands you could fly to during the Mystery Island tours, could result in you just getting scorpions or just getting tarantulas, which could be really lucrative. But you can actually increase your odds of making a regular island Tarantula Island by cutting down all of the trees, breaking all the rocks, and just moving everything else to the beach. And depending on what month it is, since the game is requiring to spawn in some sort of insect at any given moment on this island, the likelihood of you getting a tarantula, since there isn't a spawn opening for rocks or trees, becomes increased. This was a really cool method back in the beginning, and it works really well during like March and parts of April. But yeah, that's really a cool thing that's been in the game. Now, we did a whole video where we talked about probabilities and algorithm manipulation in Animal Crossing. It sounds way more complicated than it really is, but it is a good video if you wanted to go check out something else that kind of tackles this topic of manipulating aspects of Animal Crossing. But otherwise, that's it. We've made it through every mainline Animal Crossing game and Pocket Camp. So So if you like this video, make sure you let me know and maybe subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this. We're getting close to 15,000 subscribers and most of our viewers are non-subscribers. So there's room for us to grow. We can make it as an Animal Crossing YouTuber in 2023 somehow, but I might need your guys' help. That's it for today. We'll see you next time with a new video.